And there's healings along the way, as we have seen. There's parables as well. There's stories that are meant to teach a lesson to us. And it often seems that Jesus, especially recently, has his lessons aimed squarely at the Pharisees and the religious elite. Of course, Jesus is always brilliant in his wisdom and his healings and his stories. He reveals the inherent injustice of his day and his culture. But more than that, he really is advocating a paradigm shift in religious thinking. A paradigm shift that lifts up the lowly and brings down the high and mighty. This is what God is about, Jesus says. And the time is now for the kingdom to come. So let us hear Jesus again as he dines with the Pharisees.
This morning's verse is from Luke 14:1, and then 7 through 14. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, he was watching them closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the place of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit at the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you have been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. This is the word of God.
God is still speaking. Thanks be to God.
Loving God, show us your love, your acceptance, your radical hospitality. Make it a part of us. Keep us humble, I pray, that we may serve, so that the more we sacrifice of ourselves, the more we may be exalted, sitting at your heavenly table. Bless the speaking, the hearing, and the living of your holy word. Amen. The best seat. Now, I love music. I really do, and I have a particular bias towards a certain generation of music. I just want to let you know it's in the 80s. That is the best music, I'm telling you. And when I was in high school, though, of course, I was different. And I usually, listen to things that not everybody else listens to. And I got into a kind of music called New Wave. That's what I listened to in high school. And my favorite bands were New Order and Depeche Mode, both English bands. Man, and I really loved it. But when college came, I had this short little bit where I was into industrial music, but that's really weird stuff, so it's kind of hard stuff. But then I went to alternative, right? In college, alternative. And I eventually found the band Toad the Wet Sprocket, which I play sometimes here. Nobody else listens to them and knows who the heck they are, but that's all right. They're really good. You should listen to them. But anyway, when I was that age, though, in high school and college especially, man, I loved to go to concerts. I would hear live music. That's what I wanted to do. And I never liked the big bands. I mean, the ones where you had to sit, and you couldn't even see them. I mean, you had assigned seatings. No, that was not the kind of bands that I would always go and see. I went to see the more intimate venues where you had to get there ahead of time, and then I say seat, but really you had to stand, right there in front of people, and be right up and personal with the band. So a lot of these bands that I saw, I mean, I was within 5-10 feet of the band when they performed. In St. Louis, where I grew up, there was this bar there. It was right on the riverfront, and it was called Mississippi Nights. And I went there all the time. You couldn't, they let minors in, you couldn't drink, but they'd get you in, I wear an armband or something. But sadly, the place is gone now. They tore it down. But I saw Toad the Wet Sprocket there a few times. I saw a band called Toy Dog Pondering. Now, who knows what that band is? Toy Dog Pondering. Nobody knows? They're from Hawaii, I think. How about Men Without Hats? All right, Ginger heard them. Men Without Hats, nobody heard them? All right. What kind of church do I have here, you know? How about the Sundays? Have you ever heard of the Sundays? Jeez, oh man, okay. How about the Red Hot Chili Peppers? All right, y'all heard them. Hey, I saw them when they were nobodies. I mean, they were nobodies. It was really, and really it was only my girlfriend that brought me there. She liked them. But I could say I saw them. And that was before they were nobodies back then. All right, so, but these kind of bands, right, if you wanted the best seat, you had to get there early and wait. There weren't any assigned seats. You know, I'd go often, this might be strange, I'd go by myself. I wanted to see them, you know, I didn't care, I just go by myself. And I would bring a book to read. And I'd just sit there and read, you know, while everybody waited, because I didn't want to just wait, you know, and nobody had phones back then. It's hard to believe, but we didn't have cell phones back then. So, and I'd wait. And I did all this really because I wanted the best seat. So today Jesus talks about having the best seat. Now, it's hard for us to understand Jesus' culture. It was 2,000 years ago. In that culture that Jesus lived, where you sat at a party meant a huge deal. I mean, it meant a lot. It really showed your place in the social order of things. And now, even though that's hard for us to understand in some ways, you know, I think we can understand the desire to get ahead and to kind of be better than your neighbor, that sort of thing. And indeed, in our own society, I mean, the culture tells us that, you know, we have to strive for money and for fame and for power and influence, and even if that means competing with others. And we, of course, in the Bible have the golden rule that tells us you're supposed to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but maybe today people like to say, you better do unto others before they do unto you. You know, so you gotta make sure you get it first. So no matter really where you come from, how old you are, whether you grew up in the 80s like me, or older or younger, pretty much the universal rule tells us that you ought to pursue your own desires and wants, your own selfish needs. Because we're encouraged to look out for number one, for us. Pursue our best interest, often at any cost. But we all know that is not what God intends for the human race. It wasn't true back in Jesus' day, and it's certainly not true now. Craving this best seat will only make you miss the kingdom. Because Jesus calls us to a life of humble service. And that is the only way to truly find life. This morning we have a passage about humility and hospitality. Jesus finds himself in the home of a Pharisee in what can only be described as a tense visit. Here it's the Sabbath. Already Jesus has offended the Pharisees by healing someone on the Sabbath, and now he finds himself going to eat with this so-called in-crowd. And you can't really call Jesus a gracious guest either. In fact, he's downright rude to his host and the others that are gathered there. The first thing he does is admonish them for how they arrange their seats. You can see them sort of jockeying with one another for the best seat. To hear what this so-called blasphemer is going to say or do. But Jesus doesn't even make it that far. Immediately he tells them this parable about sitting in the places of honor at a wedding banquet. Again, this might be unfamiliar to us, but back in that day, Jesus wasn't telling them anything new. In fact, he was reminding them of an ancient proverb that you shouldn't sit down in the best spot in the house and then feel ashamed when the host tells you, well, you got to get up and move to this other spot so somebody else can sit down. Jesus tells them instead, of course, you should sit at a low place. And then you will be honored when the host moves you up to a place of higher honor. Now, it might not mean much to you where you get to sit, at Thanksgiving dinner around the table. I don't know, but to these folks living in Jesus' deal, this was a big deal. It was huge. The placement of seats was very important. It demonstrated the inherent classism within their culture. But just as the guests are thinking Jesus is simply quoting some proverbial wisdom, he goes and turns it into something else. And he says this classic line, "For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." Suddenly the guests look around. They realize Jesus is talking about much more than simply table manners. Jesus, in fact, is describing the kingdom of God. This is the way things are supposed to be. And those Pharisees painfully realized that once again Jesus has made them look bad, had criticized them, humiliated them. The Message says the classic line a bit differently. This is Gene Peterson. What I'm saying is, if you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. If you're content to simply be yourself, to even be humble, then you will become more than yourself. You'll be exalted. You'll find your true place, a place of honor within the kingdom of God. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all those who humble themselves will be exalted. Once again, Jesus is talking about role reversal, a total role reversal. He's done this before. It's not like just those people who lauded over others are going to be put to shame, and it's not like only the poor and the outcast will be exalted either. In fact, Jesus is advocating a total and complete juxtaposition of roles. This is where the slave is uplifted, while the slaveholder is put in its place. Where the hungry are fed, and those that are full end up hungry and lose all they have. Where the outcast is welcomed with open arms, and those people of prestige and power are put out on the street. But even so, we see that Jesus Christ is advocating a certain kind of lifestyle, that life of faith, it has to be dictated by servanthood. It's not that you get any reward from it. It's that you give and serve and care. If you look at Israelites' history, a lot of times they fail to understand what it meant to be chosen by God. I think all of us have had that problem from time to time. But the Israelites, they knew they had special favor with God. They were God's children. They were God's chosen. And because of that, being chosen, I think they had a feeling of entitlement. They also might have thought, that they would always be on top. God had their back because they're the chosen. But the prophets, of course, reminded them that that is certainly not the case. Being chosen doesn't mean that your lives are always free from problems, or that you're always going to have your bills paid, or that your health is always secure. Being chosen by God means that you are called to a greater responsibility. That God is going to use you to do the work of the Lord. That God is going to put into practice the gracious will of Jesus Christ in you. And so what God wants you to do is to get down on your knees and serve. And as Jesus tells us, pick up the cross and follow Him. I think we need to be told this message again and again, especially in our nation. You know, we are in the most powerful nation in the world. We are blessed because of that. But at the same time, we have a responsibility. And we have a duty. And the truth is we know that we can be an awful, greedy bunch. And although that we probably don't like to admit it, we can also be pretty darn self-centered at times. I know that I am at times. But yet we also know, those that follow Christ, that Jesus asks us to serve, to humble ourselves, to fall on our knees and prostrate ourselves before the one that gives us life. That we must recognize that Jesus Christ is our brother and our sister and the stranger on the street. As if that was not enough, Jesus goes on. To his host, Jesus tells him about giving a dinner or a luncheon that is so easy to invite your friends and relatives and even your rich neighbors, because after all, they might invite you in return. It's almost like the only reason you would be hospitable in the first place is so that you could get something in return. But Jesus tells him, don't do it that way. You need to invite people that can never pay you back. People like the poor, the lame, the crippled, even the blind. Gene Peterson calls them the misfits from the wrong side of the tracks. These folks might not be able to return the favor, but Christ assures us we will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. When we invite those on the margin to the table, we're not just experiencing a blessing from God, that God can use us to be a blessing to others. Now let's check back with the Jewish standards. If you're really paying attention and you understood the Jewish law, you realize that all those outcasts that Jesus just named, they were considered unclean by Jewish standards. You weren't supposed to even associate with those kinds of people because that would be a sin. They're unclean. And yet Jesus is saying that the true sign of hospitality, the true sign of humble service, is that you do these things, not for any reward or recompense earned, but simply because it is the right thing to do. And that you should expect nothing in return. There's an old story about a Franciscan monk in Australia who was assigned to be the guide and gopher of Mother Teresa when she made a visit to New South Wales. He was so thrilled and excited. You know, this was a great woman. He dreamed of all the things he'd be able to talk with her about, learn from her as they chat. But during her visit, he got so frustrated because even though he was right by her the whole time, he never got to talk to her. She was always talking with other folks and meeting people and greeting folks that she was to meet. And finally, when her tour was over, she was going to fly to New Guinea, and in desperation, the Franciscan friar spoke to Mother Teresa and said, look, if I pay my own fare to New Guinea, could I sit next to you on the plane so that we could talk and I could learn from you? And she was kind of taken aback. He's looking at him and she said, "Do you have enough money to pay airfare to New Guinea?" He said, "Yeah, sure." "Then give that money to the poor," she said. "You'll learn more than that than anything I can tell you." We know that Mother Teresa, the saint that she was, she understood Jesus' ministry was to bring good news to the poor. And so she made it her ministry as well. What we're talking about is proclaiming good news. We know the gospel literally means good news. Good news that must be proclaimed and delivered. And that means going out to all the people of the earth. We know from Scripture that if there are any people that hold special favor in God's eyes, it is the nobodies of this world. The downtrodden, the poor, the oppressed, those that have no fame, no prestige, no honor. Those without money or possessions. Those who are even searching for their next meal. I'm proud of this congregation because we know that there are others outside our doors, and we have done much to help those in need. But once again, we are reminded that that is our mission, that we must not forget that there are others in this world that have far less than we do. And I think sometimes it's just that we become comfortable. I do. I have my own little world, and I'm used to the people that I hang out with, and that's just different in a lot of ways. But Christ reminds us we must get out there. We must find the misfits of our world and show them love. We must let that prophetic, redemptive, life-transforming message of the gospel propel us out into the world to share the good news of God's love, to build the body of Christ, to witness the kingdom in our midst. And we know we're each different, we're each unique, we each have our own gifts and strengths, but I believe that God needs every single one of us, that we all have a role to play, that the Lord wants every single person at this table, at the Lord's table, and as followers of Jesus Christ, as disciples, we must humbly serve and reach out to all the misfits and make sure that they know they are welcome at the table. If we're going to find the best seat, folks, then we have to strive, that we have to be willing to give up a seat. We have to be willing to surrender and thus find what life is really about. Life in the kingdom of God. Thanks be to God.